In the heart of Texas, a 20-year-old girl named Emily Parker lost everything in a tragic accident that left her paralyzed. Broken dreams and silent tears became her world, until fate introduced her to Jake Miller, a 25-year-old mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart full of kindness. What started as a simple act of help soon turned into a story of hope, courage, and an unbreakable bond that would change both of their lives forever. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. Emily Parker was only 20 years old, living in Austin, Texas, when her life changed forever. She had once been full of dreams and energy, with a heart set on becoming a professional dancer. Every evening after college classes, she spent hours at the studio, practicing routines, perfecting her moves and imagining herself performing on grand stages. Her friends admired her passion and believed she was destined for greatness. Emily herself had believed that nothing could stop her from reaching the top. But life has a way of surprising people, often in the harshest ways, and Emily's destiny took a painful turn. The night of the accident still haunted her. She had been driving home with music playing in the background, thinking about her upcoming performance. A sudden flash of headlights appeared, followed by a crushing impact. The sound of twisting metal, shattering glass, and her own scream filled her memory. When she opened her eyes in the hospital days later, she was surrounded by doctors and nurses, her parents crying by her bedside. She tried to move her legs, but nothing happened. The doctor's words echoed like thunder. "Emily, I'm sorry, but you won't be able to walk again." At first, she refused to believe it. She thought it was temporary, that somehow she would recover with therapy. But as weeks turned into months, reality sank in. Her legs no longer obeyed her, and her body felt like a cage. The very legs that once danced with grace now sat lifeless, leaving her in a wheelchair. The vibrant girl who once inspired everyone around her was gone, replaced by a broken soul who questioned the meaning of living. She watched her friends continue with their lives, their laughter on social media only reminding her of everything she had lost. Her parents tried their best to encourage her, but even they struggled. They whispered about her future when they thought she couldn't hear. They worried about how she would live, study, or even find happiness again. Emily felt their sadness, but couldn't accept their comfort. Instead, she isolated herself, closing the door to her room and staying there for hours. She stopped attending college, ignoring calls from classmates and professors. The textbooks on her desk gathered dust, and the posters of dancers on her wall became painful reminders of dreams that now felt impossible. Every morning, she woke up to the same routine: silence, stillness, and a heart heavy with despair. Her wheelchair was supposed to give her mobility, but to Emily it felt like a prison. She hated the sound of its wheels against the floor, a constant reminder of what she had lost. Sometimes she stared at her reflection in the mirror, unable to recognize the girl who once twirled with elegance. Her eyes, once bright with ambition, now looked dull and tired. Even simple joys, like listening to music or watching dance videos, only brought tears, because they reminded her of what she could no longer do. Her friends visited less and less as time passed. At first, they came with flowers, cards, and promises to stay by her side. But as the weeks turned into months, their visits became rare. They were busy with college, internships, and their own lives. Emily didn't blame them, but every absence cut deeper. She began to feel invisible, forgotten by the world she once belonged to. Even family gatherings felt different. Her relatives treated her carefully, avoiding topics about her future or her dreams. She could sense their pity, and it crushed her spirit even more. Sometimes at night, Emily cried silently into her pillow so her parents wouldn't hear. "What's the point of living like this?" she whispered to herself again and again. Her hands would tremble as she gripped the wheelchair, wishing she could throw it away, wishing she could run again, dance again, feel the wind against her face. She envied the simplest things: children playing in the park, joggers passing by, couples dancing at weddings. These small moments, once taken for granted, now felt like distant miracles. The loneliness was unbearable, and she wondered if life was punishing her. She tried therapy sessions, both physical and emotional, but even those felt empty. The physical exercises only reminded her of her limitations, and the counseling felt like meaningless words. No one truly understood her pain. People told her she was strong, but inside she felt weak, broken, and unworthy. She envied the old version of herself, the girl who was unstoppable, confident, and full of light. Now she was a shadow of that person, drifting through days without purpose. She feared that this was how the rest of her life would be, trapped in endless hopelessness. Months passed in silence, and time felt heavy, each day dragging into the next. Emily stopped marking her calendar because nothing awaited her anymore. She no longer counted birthdays or holidays. They felt meaningless. Her room became both her comfort and her cage. Posters, trophies, and medals from her dance competitions stared back at her like ghosts of a past life. Sometimes she wanted to take them down, to erase the reminders, but she didn't have the strength. Other times she clung to them desperately, as if they were the only proof that she once mattered. Deep inside, Emily believed her story had ended long before it should have. She was only 20, but she felt like her life was already over. Dreams had been shattered, friendships had faded, and hope had abandoned her. She told herself that nothing good could ever happen again, that she was destined to live in shadows while the world danced in light. But what Emily didn't know was that fate had not finished writing her story. Life had a surprise waiting for her, an unexpected meeting with someone who would see the strength hidden within her pain, someone who would help her believe again. The afternoon sun in Austin burned hot on the pavement as Emily rolled her wheelchair toward a small diner. She had only wanted a quiet lunch, a moment to escape her thoughts, but fate decided otherwise. Halfway across the sidewalk, her wheelchair jerked, rattled, and finally stopped moving. Panic struck her. She pressed the controls again and again, but nothing happened. People passed by, glancing for a second before moving on. Some looked sympathetic, but no one stopped. Helpless, Emily sat there in the heat, tears stinging her eyes, wondering why life always found new ways to break her. Just as she lowered her head in defeat, a voice cut through her despair. "Need some help?" She looked up to see a young man wiping his hands with an oil-stained rag. His clothes smelled faintly of grease, and his work boots were dusty. His name was Jake Miller, a 25-year-old mechanic from a nearby garage. He had been grabbing lunch at the diner when he noticed her. Unlike others, he didn't pass by or stare in pity. He crouched down, smiling kindly, ready to help. Emily hesitated, embarrassed by her situation. She hated relying on strangers, hated the vulnerability of asking for help. But Jake didn't wait for permission. "Don't worry," he said gently. "I've fixed tougher things than this." His confidence surprised her. Most people treated her chair like a fragile medical device, but Jake treated it as something he could repair, like a car or a bike. With practiced hands, he examined the wheels and wiring, his brow furrowing in concentration. Within minutes, he had tightened a loose wire, adjusted the controls, and had the chair working again. The relief in Emily's chest was overwhelming, but so was her curiosity. "You really fixed it?" she asked softly, almost not believing it. Jake grinned. "Of course. Machines talk to me. You just have to listen." His words made her smile for the first time in a long while. Strangers often left her feeling invisible or pitied, but Jake's tone was different. He treated her as if she were equal, not broken. That tiny spark of respect warmed her heart. Before leaving, he told her, "If it gives you trouble again, I'll be around." Then he walked back inside casually, as if helping her was the most natural thing in the world. Emily thought that would be the last time she saw him. But 2 days later, Jake showed up outside her house. He had found her address through the diner's staff and wanted to make sure the wheelchair was still working properly. Emily was shocked. No one had ever cared enough to check on her like this. "I just want to be sure you're okay," Jake explained. His sincerity disarmed her. Over the next few weeks, he visited regularly. inspecting the chair, adjusting small details, and making her laugh with his stories from the garage. Slowly, her cold walls of isolation began to melt. One evening, Jake arrived with a notebook filled with sketches and measurements. "I've been thinking," he said, laying the pages across her kitchen table. "What if I build you something better? A chair that's stronger, faster, and easier to use. Not just repairs, an upgrade." Emily blinked in disbelief. No one had ever gone that far for her. "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake shrugged, his smile humble. "Because you deserve more than just getting by. You deserve freedom. For the first time in years, someone saw her not as a patient, but as a person who could dream again." Emily tried to argue at first, insisting it was too much work, but Jake wouldn't hear it. "I've got spare parts lying around," he insisted. "This is what I do. Let me help." Over the next several weeks, he worked late into the night at his garage, piecing together scraps of metal, wires, and motors. When Emily visited to see his progress, she was amazed. He explained every detail: lightweight frames, custom controls, shock absorbers for rough roads. His excitement was contagious, and Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. As the project continued, their bond deepened. Emily found herself looking forward to Jake's visits. He never looked at her with pity, only with genuine respect. He made her laugh, teased her gently, and listened when she spoke about her dreams. One evening, she confided in him about dancing. "It was my whole life," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "And now it's gone." Jake leaned closer, his eyes steady. "Maybe you can't dance the way you used to, but that doesn't mean your story's over. You still have something to give." His words planted a seed in her heart. For Emily, every moment with Jake was healing. He reminded her of the world outside her pain, a world she thought she had lost forever. His kindness was simple, quiet, but powerful. Slowly, she began to believe again, not only in people but in herself. Each day, as she watched him work tirelessly on her chair, she realized this wasn't just about mechanics, it was about compassion. He was giving her back a piece of her freedom, and with it, a reason to live. Hope flickered like a fragile flame inside her, ready to grow brighter. When Jake finally tightened the last bolt and tested the modern motorized wheelchair he had built, Emily sat in stunned silence. The sleek design, the smooth controls, the way it responded so effortlessly, it was unlike anything she had imagined. She ran her hands along the armrests, her eyes wide with awe. This is incredible," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Jake only smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Told you I could do it." In that moment, Emily realized that this ordinary mechanic had done something extraordinary. He hadn't just fixed her chair, he had repaired her spirit. When Jake finally presented the wheelchair to Emily, her breath caught in her throat. She had expected something simple, just an improvement over her old chair, but what stood before her was extraordinary. Sleek lines of polished metal, comfortable seating, and controls that felt smooth under her fingertips. It was unlike anything she had seen before. As she carefully sat down, her body relaxed into the frame, as if it had been made just for her. When she pressed the joystick, the chair moved forward effortlessly. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from gratitude. "This isn't just a wheelchair," Emily whispered, her voice shaking. "It's freedom." Jake smiled, standing quietly beside her, his hands still stained from grease and late-night work. He didn't need recognition, applause, or rewards. For him, the greatest gift was seeing Emily's joy, watching her move confidently, turning in circles, laughing through tears. It was enough to make every sleepless night worth it. In that moment, Emily realized this mechanic had given her something priceless, a second chance at life. The next few weeks changed everything. With her new wheelchair, Emily began to rediscover the world outside her room. She enrolled back into college, rolling through campus with newfound independence. People who once looked at her with pity now saw her smiling, determined, and unstoppable. Professors welcomed her return, classmates cheered, and old friends embraced her again. For the first time since her accident, Emily felt like she belonged. Each day, she woke up with purpose, her mind racing with possibilities instead of despair. The shadows of her past slowly lifted, replaced by light. One day, Emily returned to her old dance studio, the place she had avoided for so long. The scent of polished wood, the echoes of music, and the mirrors lining the walls all brought back memories. She wheeled herself to the center of the room, her hands trembling. At first, sadness gripped her heart. She couldn't move like she used to. But then inspiration struck. Instead of mourning what she had lost, she began choreographing movements with her upper body, creating routines designed for people in wheelchairs. In that moment, a new dream was born. Emily decided she would become a teacher, a mentor for those who felt trapped by their limitations. She began offering small classes for kids and adults with disabilities, showing them that dance wasn't just about legs. It was about rhythm, expression, and soul. Her students adored her. They saw not just a teacher, but a role model, someone who had endured pain and risen stronger. Word spread quickly, and soon her classes grew. The studio buzzed with energy, laughter, and the sound of music blending with the whirl of wheels. Local newspapers picked up her story first, then television stations. Headlines called her the dancing spirit of Austin. Reporters marveled at her ability to inspire others despite her condition. But Emily always gave credit to Jake. "He gave me back my freedom," she said in interviews. "Without him, I wouldn't be here today." Jake, however, always stayed in the background. He didn't seek fame or recognition. He stood quietly, his arms folded, smiling proudly as Emily shone. To him, she was the real miracle, not the chair he built. As her popularity grew, Emily received invitations to speak at schools, events, and community gatherings. She shared her journey of despair, struggle, and rebirth. Standing in her wheelchair before large crowds, she spoke about strength, hope, and kindness. Audiences often rose to their feet in standing ovations, moved by her courage. Parents with disabled children reached out to her, thanking her for proving that life after tragedy could still hold beauty. Emily embraced her new role as not just a dancer, but a voice of hope. She realized her accident had not ended her story, it had rewritten it. Through all of this, Jake remained her anchor. He continued to visit, making small adjustments to her chair, always ensuring it ran smoothly. But beyond mechanics, he became her closest friend, her confidant. They shared late-night conversations, laughter over simple jokes, and quiet moments of reflection. Emily often wondered why someone like him had chosen to help her. Jake's answer was always simple: "Because I could." That humility touched her deeply. He had no hidden motives, no expectations, just a pure heart determined to make a difference. One evening, after a community event where Emily had spoken to hundreds of people, she wheeled herself outside to find Jake waiting by his old pickup truck. The night sky was clear, stars glittering above them. She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You changed my life, Jake," she said softly. "When no one else believed in me, you did." Jake scratched the back of his neck, embarrassed by the praise. "You did the hard part, Emily. You found your strength. I just gave you a tool." But Emily knew it was more than that. He had given her hope. Emily's life was no longer defined by loss. It was defined by resilience, courage, and love. She had transformed her pain into purpose, becoming an inspiration not only in Austin, but beyond. And through it all, standing quietly behind her, was Jake, the 25-year-old mechanic whose kindness had rewritten her future. Her journey proved that sometimes the greatest miracles don't come from wealth or fame, but from the compassion of ordinary people. Emily's story was living proof that one stranger's kindness could change a life forever.